At ListenLayer, we believe it is time to finally stop using thank you pages to track conversions from form submissions. Not only does it create a subpar user experience, it limits a marketer's ability to collect more insightful and useful data. So let's take a look at how ListenLayer can make this possible and open up opportunities for you to collect better data. Before you dive in, make sure that under the website settings, your domain name is properly defined and that you've placed the tracking script on all the pages of your website. And then for today's demonstration, we're going to be using HubSpot forms. So we'll go ahead and turn that listener on and we'll jump to the features screen. Now, every listener that you turn on has specific activity features. And when those are enabled, they will start to push events into the data layer when the particular listener identifies that those actions have occurred on the website. So if a user submits a HubSpot pop-up form, for example, this event is going to be pushed into the data layer. So today we're going to be showing how you can use this event to track conversions as opposed to having to redirect the user to a thank you page. So let's go ahead and enable some of these features. And for the sake of illustration, we'll turn on a few features within the regular forms section as well. Now, don't forget that most of those activity features are going to correspond to at least one event under event settings. And so what we'll see is that now that we have those features on, we have a few events that are turned on under event settings. And we're going to publish our changes. Now we're going to jump over to our demonstration website. And just because I'm not familiar with what's been happening on the site recently, I'm going to go ahead and do a hard refresh. Pull up in the console. And we're going to open up Google Tag Manager. And we know that our ListenLayer script is published. I just want to open up debug. So we're going to go ahead and relaunch the site with the debug open. So what we'll see right away is that we actually already have a pop-up bar at the top, and we have one that pops up down here as well. And these are specific HubSpot pop-up forms. Now, what we should notice when we begin to interact with these is that the data layer should start to receive information from the listener. So once the user interacted with that pop-up, the actual form in the pop-up loaded. And because of one of the features that I had enabled, we're now receiving an event into the data layer called HS pop-up loaded. And this can be extremely useful if you want to actually track the number of impressions of that individual form as opposed to just the form submissions. But I often find that it's even more useful to have this loaded feature turned on so I can, while looking at a page, I can easily identify, for example, what the form ID is of that HubSpot form, or if you're using Gravity Forms or any other tool, they're going to have similar features. So most marketers would just simply fail to track conversions on this form or redirect the user to a new page in order to track the conversion, that page being some sort of maybe thank you page. But specifically in this experience, we've kind of interrupted the user as they've been interacting with another piece of information. So really the last thing we should be doing is redirecting them. And also the last thing we should be doing is ignoring this and not tracking the form submission itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit that form, and notice we did not take the user to a thank you page. And if we jump back to our debug view, we have a new event in the data layer called HS pop-up submitted. And so what we can do now in Google Tag Manager is take the name of this event and create a trigger. So let's jump into Tag Manager. We're going to go to Triggers, Create New. And we're going to select the option Custom Event. Now, you can get the event name from here, or as a reminder, under Event Settings, we have the actual event names themselves. So I'm going to grab that and I'm going to paste it here. And I'm just going to go ahead and name my trigger after the actual name of the event for easy identification. And now, anytime this event is pushed into the data layer, we can fire tags or inside of Google Tag Manager to push specific conversion data into all of our marketing platforms. So I could trigger a Google Ads tag. I could trigger a Google Analytics event or a GA4 event. I could trigger a standard or a custom event for my Facebook ads. I could send an event to LinkedIn. There's so many things that you can do. Now, this is quite a simple setup, right? We're going to be triggering this on every single pop-up form submission. But there's a lot more that you can do, either simply using Google Tag Manager or actually inside of Listen Layer. So I'll hit on those just briefly. The first one would be that we could actually modify this and limit the scope based on some other piece of information. For example, maybe the form ID. Well, this form ID variable is something that you have to create inside of Google Tag Manager. And what you would be doing is you'd be referencing this form ID right here, and you'd be saying, hey, I only want to fire this event when the form ID contains a certain value or equals a certain value. And so you can do that to limit the scope inside of Google Tag Manager. You could do this in a number of ways. For example, you could only fire the form if maybe the email field does not contain the word test. The other thing you can do is inside of Listen Layer, under Features, you can turn on custom data layer values. What this allows you to do is write simple but extremely powerful rules inside of Listen Layer to push custom values into your data layer so that you can further refine and enhance your tracking. So I recommend, once you get the basics down, jump into some of those features and learn more about those. So now we've taken a look at the pop-up forms. Let's jump over to a simple regular form. Now, some of these regular test forms are going to redirect the user to a thank you page. Some of them are not. So let's just test one out and see. This one did not redirect the user to a thank you page. And if we jump over here, what we'll notice is that when this page loaded, we had multiple HubSpot forms on that page. And so we received multiple form loaded events in the data layer. We can identify the forms based on their ID. And then when I submitted that form, we received a single event called HS form submitted. So again, if I want to track conversions from all of my HubSpot forms, I no longer have to send users to a thank you page. In fact, I no longer have to even really know that a form exists. I can simply create another trigger using custom event, paste the name in here. Now, no matter what, my marketing operations team or my website development team, they could put as many forms, as many HubSpot forms as they want on any pages of the website. And no matter what, Listen Layer will listen for those forms. It'll know when they're submitted, and it'll push this event directly into the data layer. And so again, I could go and I could create a simple tag. And let's just use a Google Ads conversion tracking tag as an example. We're going to be given a conversion ID from our account, as well as a specific label, which would represent the conversion itself. I'm just putting placeholders there, obviously. If I wanted to fire this on all conversions now, I can simply say, send this event to Google Ads when my HS form submitted event occurs or when my HS pop-up submitted occurs. Now, of course, I would recommend segmenting these two out so, potentially at least, depending on your situation, to where they may have individual labels so that the conversions are separated from each other. You could actually use a lookup table inside of Google Tag Manager to do that more easily. But what you've seen here is that in certain situations, like with HubSpot pop-up forms, where it's extremely bad from a user experience to redirect the user away from what they were doing, we can now easily track all of those form submissions without doing that. And then even normal standard forms, we can avoid redirecting the user to a thank you page and even having thank you pages. We can increase the reliability of our tracking because if a new form is posted without our knowledge, it'll automatically track under this situation. And overall, we can improve the ability to collect better data and to segment that data better. Because once we're running on ListenLayer, we can start to use some of the more advanced features to, for example, customize the data inside of the data layer. So I hope this was helpful today. I recommend jumping in, creating a free account in ListenLayer. It's totally free to start. And you can use that free account forever. And you only need to upgrade if you get to the point where you want to use a more advanced feature or you need more volume. So get started today.